Hello, we'll be talking about family finding for ICWA youth in Oklahoma Human Services to result in timely permanency within their kin, culture, and community. My name is Kesha Womack, and I'm an MPLD Fellow of 2023. I am currently a Regional Placement Team Member, Child Welfare Specialist 4 at Oklahoma Human Services. Today, we'll be talking about why it's important of keeping ICWA youth connected to their kin, culture, and community, my PICO, a historical timeline, introduction of ICWA and OICWA, placement preferences, my ARP due phase, evaluation, strategy, and results, the challenges and limitations, next steps, impact of MPLD on me professionally and personally, and any questions. Why I chose my ARP. I chose this topic because I realized the importance of youth staying connected to their kin, culture, and community when I experienced Native American youth being placed in a non-Native foster home. Prior to this experience, I did not realize the impact it could have on youth and the barriers that youth could face when they are not able to stay connected to their kin, culture, and community. In the U.S., there are 537 federally recognized tribes. Oklahoma has 38 federally recognized tribes. In my current position, I am fortunate to be able to assist in finding Native American youth ICWA-compliant foster homes in hopes the youth feels a sense of familiarity and support. Next, we're going to talk about the importance of keeping ICWA youth connected to their kin, culture, and community. It provides them a sense of belonging and connection. It allows a youth to hold on to their beliefs. It allows a youth to stay connected to their culture, and it keeps youth connected to their tribe's traditions or rituals, which could include powwows, hunting, gathering, and beadwork. And it allows for Native use of Native language in the home. My PICO. What are the perspectives of staff on what is currently taking place and what is needed to increase permanency and improve efforts for keeping Native American youth connected to their kin, culture, and community? My ARP changed during the course of the year. I had originally planned a different ARP, but due to numerous barriers that I encountered, I had to switch my ARP to see what you see on the slide now. This change happened later in the year, so I had to work hard to pivot my plan and develop a new PICO. For my ARP, I collected data via internal surveys to specific identified groups in the state of Oklahoma. I also completed case reviews. Before we get into my ARP, I think it is important to add the contextual information about what happened to Indian children and families that led to ICWA being enacted. This will help to shed some light on why my PICO topic is so important. We'll go over our historical timeline. In 1879, the federal government funded the first of many off-reservation boarding schools for Native American children. The goal of these schools was to absorb and assimilate Native American children into white culture and society. By 1926, nearly 83% of Native American school-age children were attending boarding schools, National Native American Boarding School Hailing Coalition. There were eventually over 350 boarding schools across the United States. 2 years later, in 1928, a report titled The Problem of Indian Administration was released, documenting deplorable conditions in Indian boarding schools. As a result, many Indian boarding schools began to close. 30 years later, in 1958, a pilot project called the Indian Adoption Project began. Its goal was to stimulate the adoption of Native American children as a nationwide basis to primarily non-Indian families. In the 1960s, the scoop, about 1 in 4 Native American children were living apart from their families. In the 1970s, 85% of Native American children removed were placed outside their families and communities, even when appropriate and willing relatives were available. The U.S. government handed control of the remaining boarding schools to tribes. By 1978, ICWA was enacted, and in 1982, OICWA was enacted, which is Oklahoma ICWA. The information on this slide is coming straight from the Children's Bureau. It is important to note that this law was enacted in 1978. It was enacted due to the awareness that American Indian children were being removed from their homes and communities at a much higher rate than non-Native children. The law sets up standards for removal and placement. The Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978 is a federal law that governs the removal and out-of-home placement of American Indian children. The law was enacted after the federal government recognized that American Indian children were being removed from their homes and communities at a much higher rate than non-Native children. The law established federal standards for the removal and placement of Native children, as well as for termination of parental rights to protect the best interest of Native American children and keep them connected to their families and tribes. You may not be aware, but Oklahoma has their own policy related to ICWA. Oklahoma has 38 federally recognized tribal nations, so it is critical for our state child welfare system to work collaboratively with all tribal nations. The purpose of OICWA is to clarify state policies and procedures regarding the implementation by the state of Oklahoma of the Federal Indian Child Welfare Act. Policy of the state to cooperate fully with Indian tribes in Oklahoma. This quote shows Oklahoma's commitment to ensure that securing placement is consistent with the provisions of the Oklahoma OICWA. In all placements of an Indian child, Oklahoma Human Services utilize to the maximum extent possible services of the Indian tribe of the child, placement consistent with the provisions of the Oklahoma Indian Child Welfare Act. Now we will talk about my ARP do phase. Addressing the challenge. I completed 20 case reviews to analyze data, and I created a survey to gather specific information about active efforts, family finding, recruitment, and recommendations and feedback for how to increase permanency. I selected 20 cases of children and youth that have been in care within the last year that were eligible or enrolled members of Comanche Nation. I put together a case review tool with approximately 20 questions that included things like how long has the youth been in care, number of placement changes, where placement preferences discussed with the tribe, and I also created the survey based on what was identified from the case reviews as potential gaps in services and areas for improvement from the perspective of field staff working directly with this population. My demographics we'll talk about next that took the survey. The survey was completed by specific groups in OHS. I had 50 people complete my survey. The following groups were invited to take the voluntary survey. Region 2, Child Protection Services, Permanency Planning, Foster Care and Adoptions, Child Welfare Tribal Program Unit, Region 5 ICWA Unit, which consisted of 2 units, and Youth Transition Services, YTS. Oklahoma has 5 regions in our state. Case review findings. 85% of Oklahoma DHS identified the youth as eligible for ICWA. 80% OKDHS notified the tribe requested verification of eligibility. 40% DHS received a response from the tribe in regards to eligibility. Evaluation strategy and results. This is the perspective from the workers that completed the survey. Active efforts are affirmative, active, thorough, and timely efforts intended primarily to maintain or reunite an Indian child with his or her family. As you can see in the pie chart, 22% said active efforts are to a great extent, 47% said quite a bit, 24% said somewhat, and 6% said not too much. An example of reasonable efforts versus active efforts would be the following. Reasonable efforts, giving the parents a list of parenting classes. Active efforts, asking the tribe if parenting classes are available through the tribe. Assist the parents in signing up for the classes, and assist the parents with transportation to and from classes. Family finding tools used. Based on this data, the information management system was the #1 family finding tool used. Some of the information found in IMS would include SNAP benefits, TANF, and child support. Second, most used tool on the survey is case mining and ClearSearch, which is our family finding tool we use in Oklahoma. Least utilized tool is Ask Referral. This is a family finding unit specific to one region in the state of Oklahoma. It is important to note that on the previous slide, IMS was identified as the tool most frequently used. However, this data shows us that the best results come from important people in the child's life form. This is a form that is filled out with the family that identifies relatives and connections for the child. What are important ways that tribes can assist state agencies as they seek to keep Native American youth connected to their kin, culture, and community? A few of these are communication, intentional case staffings, and ICWA events. In the survey, we also asked, what are some strategies for recruiting more tribal foster and adoptive homes? Some feedback or suggestions we received included flyers or events, social media, question and answer sessions, and collaboration between OHS and tribal nations. Challenges and limitations. As I mentioned, I had to change my ARP midstream due to some challenges I faced. This resulted in me being behind the ball and I had to shift my focus. I encountered quite a few barriers that were not expected, such as data sharing agreement, which caused some barriers to my ARP. Next steps. OHS ICWA coordinators will continue to build rapport with OHS staff. Implement ICWA basics training along with specific ICWA trainings for each division, which would include CPS, permanency planning, and foster care and adoptions. Examine ICWA cases using case review tool that was created to inform OHS where there are gaps or missing documentation to better understand where the need for training lies. Identify family finding tools that produce the best outcomes. And once those tools are identified, allow access to the tools and provide training for all staff using the tools. MPLD impact, personally and professionally. The Minority Professional Leadership Development Program has impacted me professionally and personally. It has allowed me to strengthen my leadership skills while also learning how to step into new spaces and make my voice and presence be known. I have gained access to a network of child welfare professionals. I learned about transformational leadership, data, addressing disparities, and policy. Through the MPLD program, I have also been able to build rapport with my peers in different states. MPLD gave me the knowledge and skills to navigate the continuous work between our department and tribal nations. Thank you.